Good morning. My name's Adam, and we're here today for your Discovery at Home Biosphere program titled All Ecosystems Go. In this program, we'll learn about ecosystems and biospheres. You'll analyze all the information we talk about to identify the important relationships between different parts of a biosphere, which will allow you to make your own small biosphere and take observations. But while more people are still joining our stream, I'll tell you a little bit about a sort of experiment that I'm doing at home on my back deck. My dad is a big gardener. He loves gardening and has all these different plants at home. And a bunch of them are ones you wouldn't expect to be able to grow in Cape Breton. But I don't have that kind of space, so he got me a potato bag. And I don't mean a 10-pound bag of potatoes. It's this fabric bag that you're supposed to grow potatoes in. And normally, I guess when you're growing potatoes in the ground, they put out their stem, and on the branches of it, they grow new potatoes, new tubers, and then you also get the leafy parts. To get as many potatoes as you can while it's growing, you're supposed to bank up soil so there's more underground part of the plant. But again, on the back deck, there's no room for that. So in the potato bag, you put a little bit of dirt at the bottom, you put your seed potatoes that have sprouted in there, and cover them over. Once you get the sprouts, you put more dirt on, and you keep going up and up and up. So you start with this much dirt, and at the end of the summer, I'm going to have like 50 centimeters, hopefully all full of new potatoes. So where the experiment comes in, I had so many seed potatoes, I didn't want to waste them. And online I was reading people say, oh, you can grow potatoes in anything, an old cardboard box. So side by side, in the same sun, using the same soil and the same seed potatoes, I have a bag and the box going. And I'm going to see which one produces better potatoes. So I'm going to take some observations, and I've already started. I'm only a few days into it, but it looks like the soil was drier in the potato bag than in the box. So there might be a different different soil moisture, there might be a different evaporation. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. Anyway, I think I've gone on about potatoes for long enough now. So I'll welcome anybody who's joined since the start of this stream. Welcome everyone to our program called All Ecosystems Go. My name's Adam, and I'm one of the science educators here at the Discovery Center. Today, we're going to learn about ecosystems and biospheres. Then you'll go on to analyze the information we talk about in order to identify the important causal relationships between different factors in a biosphere. Doing that will allow you to make your own small biosphere and take observations over the next few weeks, and even further if you'd like. We hope you'll share your experience of gathering components for your biosphere and putting it all together. We'll be watching Flipgrid and our social media pages for your viewer submissions. And in addition to the scientific interest and the importance of communicating your findings, your Discovery Center tagged submission will also count as an entry to our Show Us Your Science contest, where you'll be entered to win a Science at Home prize pack. Now that we're settled and introduced, let's talk biospheres. A biosphere is a mostly closed ecosystem that contains living, biotic, and non-living, abiotic things. These biotic and abiotic components are interconnected and work together to maintain balance within their environment. Biospheres are called closed systems because, other than energy from sunlight, nothing enters or leaves the system. All the other materials and nutrients an ecosystem needs, such as water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, are already within the system and are used and recycled by the organisms living there. In chemistry and physics, we talk about isolated, closed, and open systems. The differences arise from the transfer of matter and energy. An isolated system does not allow either energy or matter in or out. A thermos, a vacuum flask, tries to approximate an isolated system, not allowing the matter of your soup to leak out and also minimizing the flow of heat energy through the walls to keep your soup warm. If you ever find a thermos that can be a perfect isolated system, buy it, assuming you can get it open to get your soup out. A normal water bottle behaves like a closed system. Heat can flow through the walls and warm your water up to room temperature, but there's no substantial matter leakage. An open system would be like a pot of soup on the stove top, allowing matter and energy both in and out. I'll now stop talking about soup. I'm feeling kind of hungry after all the soup and potato talk. Okay, biospheres. I'll bring us back to our closed biosphere system, where materials and nutrients need to be recycled within the system, not only from the addition of energy, The materials and nutrients need to be recycled within the system, with only the addition of energy from the outside. Let's gather some information on different types of biospheres. The most famous biosphere of all is our planet Earth. Actually, well, I guess there is no upside. I put north up, but they all work. All the materials on our Earth are constantly reused and recycled, whether that be the abiotic factors like water or air, think about the water cycle, or biotic factors like plants that grow and then get broken down and reused. Practically nothing except for the energy from the sun can enter our Earth's biosphere, and practically nothing but heat energy can leave into space. The Earth is a natural closed system. Humans also make artificial closed systems. See, closed? Because they help us do work. For example, we make some greenhouses into closed systems to completely control the growing conditions for the plants inside. Having control over such conditions is particularly useful when growing fragile plants that can't handle small changes in temperature or humidity. When it comes to the biotic factors, it's particularly important that your biosphere has producers, such as plants, to help capture solar energy and convert it into a form of energy that's useful for other living things. Plants use sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water to create their own food and oxygen through a process called photosynthesis, which means making with light. Plants are also very important for any microscopic consumers or decomposers to use as a food source. The photosynthetic plant captures light energy and converts it into chemical energy, food. That stored chemical energy will either be used by the plant itself or will be transferred into consumers or decomposers who eat the plant. So now, knowing this information, it's time for you to reflect on which details are key for your own biosphere to prosper. Consider what you'd like to include in your ecosystem so that once it's closed, it can thrive by recycling the things you've included. To give you some more info and some practical considerations for making your biosphere, my friend Jen is our field correspondent today, out in a field, or I think maybe the woods. Enjoy the fresh air, Jen, and stay sun safe.
Before we start making our biosphere, it's important that we have everything we need ready to go. You'll notice here I have a few different things. I have a few options for containers, some scissors, some tape, and a shovel. Now you can use whatever container that you have around you, but you'll notice that these options have a few things in common. They all have clear sides. It's very important that whatever container you choose, the sides are clear so that sunlight can get into the ecosystem inside. You'll also notice that these containers all have lids. That is very helpful in making sure that your biosphere is tight and that you can seal it up once you're finished making your ecosystem inside. Now, if you're using a 2-liter pop bottle, you'll notice that when you open the top, the opening is quite small, so it's a bit difficult to get the materials inside to make your ecosystem. We have our scissors here and they can help us out. Just take your scissors and cut all along the top so that you have a bottle that looks like this. That way, you have a large opening so you can put all your materials for your ecosystem inside, and when it's all done, just put the lid on the top, flip the top over, put it inside, and seal it up. Now that we have everything we need, we're ready to go make our biospheres.
Here's an interesting option. There's a lot of great plants. We can move the leaves aside to get some soil. And there are some really great options for sticks there too. Now, I was hoping to use moss as my producer, so I'm gonna see if I can find another spot that might have some of that. Now, moss can be found on the bottom of trees, like this one here, or on some rocks. So this is a great spot to find moss. Now, there's not much here, so I'm not going to take some from this area. So I'm going to see if there's another spot that might have a little bit more for me to take.
So after some searching, I found an area with everything that I want to include in my biosphere. You can include whatever you like to, or whatever you can find. So here's the space where I'm going to be collecting my materials
you can see I have a few different options. I have a few options for plants that you can use for producers. I might have to do some digging for some soil, but I think that we can find everything we need. So to make my biosphere, I'm going to take my container and let's see if we can find any soil. We're going to have to dig and push the leaves aside. So be careful of roots when we're digging. That's why it's handy to have the shovel. But we'll just avoid the roots and we'll get the soil that we can. You want to get as much as you can. You want to have about 2 centimeters on the bottom of your biosphere, at least, to help with any root systems from your plants. So I'm going to get a little bit more. It's okay if any leaves or other plants get in there too. But I'm going to add a little bit more soil here. Here we go. We'll give it a couple shakes, make sure it evens out on the bottom. Add a little bit more, and we're almost good. I don't think I want to include that. Here we go. So now that it's settled in the bottom, I think we're good. Now I have some moss here. I'm going to grab it gently. I want to make sure I get all the roots on the bottom as well, like you can see here. You're going to place it gently into the biosphere, push it down, make sure that the roots are covered by the soil. And I think I'd like to put in a couple sticks as well. So I'm going to put one just in the corner there. Then I think I'm going to include this one here. I'm just going to break it off and put it in the side. And there we go. That's my biosphere.
So now that my biosphere is finished, what I'm going to do is seal it up. So I have my tape here with me, some scissors, and the top to my pop bottle. So I'm going to take my pop bottle, turn it upside down, and put it in so that it's nice and snug. Now, even though it fits quite tightly, some air will still be able to get out through the seam here. So I'm going to seal it with a little bit of tape, just to make sure it's airtight. So just grab some tape and put it right over the seam. Now, if you're observing your biosphere, over the next few weeks, you might notice that it's not airtight. That is totally okay. Just take your biosphere, make sure to add some more tape until you start to notice that it is airtight, but it's okay to make adjustments as you go. So I'm going to make sure this is nice and sealed. And there we go. Now my biosphere is ready to observe for the next few weeks.
I want to put my biosphere by a sunny spot. So I'm going to put it next to a window. I'm just going to lift up the curtain so I can get as much light as possible. I'm going to place my biosphere on the windowsill. Now it's not getting much light now, but as the sun moves, hopefully it'll get some more and I'll observe it over the next few weeks.
Use a chart like the one included in the learning guide to help you offer interpretations and identify relationships between components of the ecosystems around you. This can help you decide what factors are important in the survival of your biosphere. Communicate your findings by showing us what it takes for an ecosystem to survive by letting us know what components you chose to include in your ecosystem. You could also observe your ecosystem over the next 2 weeks to a month to see if there are any changes and to help further your findings. Are they what you expected? Do you notice any changes in your biosphere? Can you see any evidence of nutrients or water cycling through your system? Let us know what you find by using the links in the description. Thank you for joining us today, and I can't wait to see what you come up with.
Thanks for showing us your foraging and careful selection of components for your biosphere. I didn't have as much choice as Jen, but I was able to gather some things from my little yard too. But before I give you a closer look at my biosphere ideas and components, there's one more important thing that I'd like to show you first, in case you're raring to go and want to take off and go foraging in our earthly biosphere. To paraphrase Adam Savage from Mythbusters, remember kids, the only difference between messing around and science is writing it down. That's why we have these suggested observation sheets to help you record how the different factors in your biosphere change over time. If you have a look at what I have here, I have time going down the side here and a few different categories up top. So you can start off by taking observations of biospheres around you, which is just what's out in real life. So what are things I saw today? I saw trees as producers, and I saw some leaves on the ground with decomposers, and you can sort of take some observations of biotic factors that you see. And then observation of abiotic factors about maybe there's a cliff eroding, which would be a great example of erosion. So rock turning into soil. And evidence of the water cycle. We certainly talk about rain and things drying out for evaporation, anything like that you see. And then it's time for your biosphere. So you can think of the biotic factors that you want to put into yours. I'm going to do a rose that I'll talk to you about, and some other stuff, and observation of abiotic factors with the soil, water, those kind of things, and evidence of water cycle. I won't talk to you about that yet because I don't want to give anything away on that. And then here, you can take observations of your initial conditions. Once you have everything together, think about how they're interacting and laid out. And then as the weeks go on, keep making observations. What's similar and what's different, what's changed now. So continue through and see how things change in your biosphere. If you want to take off and start digging holes where somebody said you could, I understand, and I'll see you back at 11. If you want to gather some more information from me, talking about the biotic and abiotic factors that I've selected for my biosphere, then hang around for the next few minutes. If you have a look at what I have here, let's see, let's start with the abiotic over here. I told you I was thinking, oh, sorry, I'll mention something about my biotic first. I think that'll make more sense. I told you I was thinking about a rose, which seems kind of like an ambitious plant to try to put into a sealed biosphere here. But these things are pretty hardy. I've seen roses growing in the salt spray on a sandy beach, and these ones are from my neighbors, and their dogs seem to love the roses and pretty much ate the bush. Like, it's down to a stump. But I think the human cleared out the damaged bits. But it's all sprouting. There's a bunch of new green growth. So I'm thinking this might be a pretty hardy plant to use in my sealed biosphere. But because I've seen them in those beachy settings, when it comes to the soil they're going to live in, I got some soil in my backyard here. This might be a little difficult to see on the camera, but let's see. Can you see that there's browner soil here and darker soil up top? I got them from two different locations. And the differences in those soil are interesting because they tell us there's a difference in the organic content, which is decayed plant matter. And also, I have this over here. If you notice, I had a biotic side and an abiotic side, but it's kind of both for soil. I almost could have put it in the middle because there's certainly a bunch of microorganisms and maybe even some insects who are living in the soil who will be important parts of my biosphere. So my plan for my rose is to take these two and mix them together to give the rose a bit of a sandy soil where I've seen them growing out in our big biosphere. I also have a little bit of gravel that I'm going to put at the bottom. And that way, if I add a bit too much water, it gives kind of a spot for the water to sit without the plant's roots all being in it, so it doesn't get muddy. Of course, I'm going to add a little bit of water. There's some moisture in my soil, but I think I'm going to give it a drop more. And then something that I don't have to add explicitly is carbon dioxide and other gases in the air. I was thinking about an old an experiment that I saw where they kind of greenhoused off part of the forest and artificially raised the carbon dioxide concentration to see if they'd observe faster plant growth, which might be relevant to our long history of different carbon dioxide levels and their different plant growth rates. So I was thinking about, should I try to add extra carbon dioxide into my biosphere, maybe blowing into it a bit, but maybe that's too many variables. Maybe I'll just leave that one alone. What else? I've talked about this guy too. I found a grass that made me think of beach grass. It's kind of like that razor grass. It was just growing next to the driveway, but I thought it might get along well with the rows in the same conditions. So that's my biotic and abiotic. And my last thing is my choice of container. So this is what I was able to come up with at home. A couple big ones and a few here. So this one here is meant to show you this isn't going to be a good one, right? Because no light's going to be able to get through. So I'm going to discard that one right away. And I've got two different sizes. I have a liter and I have 4 liters. Between the 4 liters, this guy looks much more clear. So I'm going to decide between these two. I quite like the glass because I think the clarity is going to be better. I'm a little concerned about the blue color, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this on camera, but I can see it getting a little bit hazy down around the bottom. Plastic often ages and gets a little bit more opaque, so this might not be in it for the really long haul. So if I was doing this at home, I probably would choose this guy. Or if I didn't have any time pressures, I'd probably buy a big thing of pickles and eat them all, and then in a few weeks make one in a big glass pickle jar. But for you and for the camera, I think I'm going to take the risk of the blue color and the plastic and go for a nice big 4-liter biosphere for you. Well, I'm going to think about the most important considerations for these different factors and put together my own biosphere. I hope many of you will too, and please show us your science by sharing your explorations, ideas, questions, and findings with us. Share your science with us on Flipgrid or social media, tagging us, and you'll be entered to win a Science at Home prize pack. I'll be watching for submissions to feature after the break until 5 minutes before we're back live at 11. If you missed an earlier part of our stream, you could rewind now or later to see the whole thing. I'll see you again at 11. Welcome back, everyone. If you didn't see me before, I'm Adam from the Discovery Center. Today, we're learning about biospheres, closed systems like our planet Earth, or a glass jar that let energy enter and exit, but don't allow matter to be added or removed. We've added biotic factors like plants as producers and microorganisms as decomposers, along with abiotic factors like soil, water, and air. If you missed any part of our stream since 10, you can rewind and watch now or later. You should also be able to find the learning guide for this All Ecosystems Go program on our Discovery at Home webpage. But now, I'm going to take a look at some biospheres, both these on my tabletop, as well as showcase some viewer submissions and questions. Let's start with these guys. Let's get them out of the way. So first off, you might recognize this one. This is Jen's. We had it dropped off, and you can see the moss that she selected. And I see some sticks in here. And oh, look at this. I didn't notice this when I was looking at it before. There's some light, fluffy mold all along the stick. I bet Jen picked that on purpose. That means we know that we've introduced some decomposers. It looks like they're already acting on that old stick. Perfect. And if you remember when the water cycle came up, the evidence of the water cycle, and I didn't want to say anything about it yet, because I didn't want to give it away. If you look here on the inside of the biosphere, can you see what I'm thinking about? I'm seeing condensation all over the outside, suggesting that water is evaporating from the soil, and then it can't escape, right? So then it condenses on the side and drops back down. So we get a little miniature water cycle going on in the biosphere like we hoped. Now, Ruth has brought these two in to compare, which I was really happy that she did this because they're from different sample sites. This one was an exploration out in the woods, and we see a plant that often lives in the leaf litter on the floor, and we have some of that leaf litter added in, and a spruce cone. I wonder if that's still viable. I wonder if that'll try to sprout. And I see some very dark soil, suggesting again there's a lot of organic content. Her other one was just from the backyard, so it's been more impacted by human activity. It looks like she's found some dark soil, but she told me that she had a cultivated plant in here, so not a wild one, a geranium, I believe it was. Be interesting to compare these two. So we can take observations and see how the two different ones behave. And then here's my biosphere that I put together right after I signed off to you. And looking at these other ones, I'm kind of wishing I put some more biotic components into it, because I only chose my my 2 plants, and they seem happy enough in there, and they're planted in the soil. But I haven't added any decaying organic matter that will help the cycle. So I like seeing that in some other settings. It's looking a little bare, and that might increase the evaporation because it's not insulated, but hopefully it'll all condense down. And I did add some water, so I think I should be all set. Let's have a look now at our viewer submissions. Our first one here, I thought that was a nice little idea, adding a question on to the Flipgrid so we can all see it. The question is, in my house, I have biotic factors like these plant producers, and me, the consumer, eating those plants. I also have abiotic factors like glass and plastic. If I shut my window, is this a closed system? That's a really interesting question because you see those changes to try to modify the system to make it more closed. But, why don't I play the video first before talking about it here? Let's have a look at this. So you'll see some of those factors the viewers talk about. See the plants laid out all along the windowsill where it's open, but nice and clearly closing it up. Close the system. And acting as a consumer, eating part of that producer. Lovely. So, I don't know if just eating the plants on the windowsill, sorry, I'm going to rephrase that. I'm sure that just eating your plants on the windowsill isn't going to give you enough food. But say if you had enough space that you could have a whole greenhouse inside your house, is that closed? Well, even though the window's closed, houses are pretty leaky on purpose. They leak air, which is usually a good thing because it gives us some fresh air. And newer houses and apartment buildings tend to have ventilation on purpose. So you probably won't be closed from air movement. And of course, there's also the taps and the piping. So there's water coming in and there's waste going out. So there's those few things that keep it from being a closed system. But this makes me think of closed systems in space. Because when you're in space, you can't just open the window for air. You have to take almost everything with you. So we've been starting to experiment more and more with biospheres in space, because if we're ever going to set up either on a space station or on a very inhospitable planet, we're going to be close to making a new biosphere. So they recycle all of their water now on the space station, and they still bring the food up from Earth. So wouldn't it be cool if you could have enough of a greenhouse in space or on another planet that you could make all the food that you need, and you could use all of your waste for compost and create your own biosphere? This was really cool. Thanks for asking that question. Let's go on to the next. This one here, we have a labeled one over on the side showing us some different components, and let's have a look at the video. Nice succulent plant that doesn't need too much water. Should be good and hardy in there. There's something, the seashells here are a really interesting part that I'd like to talk to you about for a sec. Because usually when there's nutrient flows between land and water, things are being washed downstream. So nutrients tend to end up in the ocean. And it's rare enough that nutrients go the other way. Some famous examples are fish like salmon swimming upriver and being caught by bear or dying there and decomposing. And so they're bringing nutrients back uphill, back up onto the land. And similarly, when I see seagulls catching mussels and dropping them to crack the shells, sometimes they bring them fairly far inland. You'll be far enough from the water sometimes thinking, how did this mussel get up here? A seagull might have dropped it there. So that's another example where we're bringing in these nutrients and bringing them back up. So this viewer here has put some seashells in there, which might provide some calcium, some important components like that. Let's check out our next viewer. Here's Nicholas's biosphere. Let's listen to him.
So this is our ecosystem. We have dirt at the bottom, which you guys told us to do. And we added dandelion, some moss, grass, some rocks and sticks, and this, which we don't know what it is.
Google that
Then,
later.
yes. Then when we put the lid on, we're pretty sure it's airtight. But my mom's gonna add some tape for it, so yeah. Hi.
Thanks, Nicholas. I'm glad that you put more plant material in to yours than I did. Like I was saying, I wish I'd put some more in. Also, your choice of container is really good because I actually forgot to mention this. I meant to hold this up and say that might be an interesting container choice because it can be big and nice and clear. And you are on the same page as me. You've done yours in a nice clear container like that. Thank you. Oh, actually, right. I was wondering about the flowers too. When I was thinking about things in my yard, dandelions were something that was coming up. And I was thinking it would be interesting to kind of see the life cycle of the dandelion in your biosphere. So that's a great example of observations of your biotic factors that you'll be able to make over time. Let's go to our next. Here's RJ's biosphere, adding some gravel in the bottom like I did. Plant. Oh, who's that I see over on the right? Is that a consumer? But not a primary consumer. Well, that's a lovely little biosphere. Thank you, RJ. Let's go on to our next. I've labeled this one a diverse biosphere, because again, this viewer has added many more components than I did. I like the combination of very different plant types with the moss and the stem plant, and some wood to decompose. Some of it looks like it's already older wood, so it's already started and probably has a little population of microorganisms. Oh, they're forget-me-nots. Lovely. That is a beautiful little biosphere. Thank you. On to our last one.
This jar has grass and soil. There's a little bit of water because it snowed. There's also this pine cone. And here we have the soil tree. Yes, I have the rocks, minerals, and everything. Bye.
Thank you very much for that submission. And it's great to see it coming from you because I've worked with you in the Innovation Lab. So we've done everything from engineering to biology now. There's a word for that, a polymath. That's somebody who is great at all different subjects. So thank you very much for your biosphere. Well, thanks so much for joining us today to learn all about biospheres. I hope you had fun exploring and analyzing information to make your biosphere and communicate your findings with the observation sheet and the media submissions that you sent to us. Keep asking questions and sharing your creations below on Flipgrid and on social media. We also have a contest for viewer submissions. When you show us your science, you'll be entered to win a Science at Home prize pack. Don't forget to tag us. I'm Adam from the Discovery Center, reminding you that sometimes the difference between messing around and science is writing it down. So keep that observation sheet going and stay curious.